Hello, I'm Lilay. Today we're going to discuss a book called The Picture of Dorian Gray. Many of you might not be very familiar with it, but its author is undoubtedly more famous, Oscar Wilde. Someone once asked Churchill, 100 years from now, if you go to heaven, who would you most want to meet? Churchill replied without hesitation, Oscar Wilde. Let's talk about him. Oscar Wilde was one of the most outstanding writers and playwrights in Britain from the late 19th century to the early 20th century. He was a social celebrity of the Victorian era, and his works span across drama, novels, essays, and poetry. Wilde was known as the sharp tongue in the literary circle. Yes, you heard that right. He was impressive, and even today, many young people compile his witty quotes saying, "You must read Wilde to learn how to humorously roast others." This became a footnote to Wilde's colorful life. He once said, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." This quote has become a reflection of his unique life. From his birth in 1854 to his death in 1900, Wilde left behind many shocking yet tasteful aphorisms and witty remarks in his short but legendary 46-year life. Many of these came from his characters, like when he told the world, "To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that is all, and to love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." You've probably heard these before, and there's "Only shallow people do not judge by appearances," which is from the book we're discussing today, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Although Wilde's life was not long, he truly existed and lived in an irreplaceably unique way. His style was eye-catching, his speech sharp, his behavior unconventional, with an extraordinary confidence and talent. In academia, he was a leader. In social circles, a celebrity. In the world, he was a genius. If you look at Wilde's photos, you'll notice he had a remarkably handsome nose and a dashing appearance. Now, let's briefly delve into Wilde's life. He was a symbol of the upper class, but experienced the sweetness of same-sex love, which led to his conviction for gross indecency and subsequent imprisonment. His plays once took London by storm, but Wilde spent his later years in poverty and died alone in a foreign land. After Wilde's death, he was initially buried in a relatively inconspicuous cemetery in Paris. However, in 1909, a mysterious female friend moved his grave to the famous Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. Wilde's grave is now located in Section 89, Plot 83, alongside greats like Chopin, Molière, and Balzac. His tombstone, while not lavish or overly decorated, is one of the most striking in the cemetery. It is covered with lipstick marks left by visitors in various shades of red, pink, and rose, arranged haphazardly and in different sizes. Despite the cemetery staff regularly cleaning the tombstone, it seems to be a futile effort. Countless new lipstick marks soon reappear, along with notes in various languages, cigarette packs, and even metro tickets left at his grave. People refer to him as Dear Oscar and pay tribute to him. I have a friend, an actress named Tian Yuan, who once initiated an activity where everyone could write a love letter to someone of their choice. Her letter began with Dear Oscar. Yes, she wrote a love letter to Wilde, which shows how he evokes such strong emotions in people, allowing him to remain alive in time and space, forever remembered. Wilde was a prince who lived his entire life in the fairy tale world of his own mind. He was charming, proud, sharp-tongued, and rebellious. He once made the entire literary circle of the 19th century uneasy, but today he remains a standard-bearer of British literature from that era, widely read and admired. Someone once asked me, what is unique about Oscar Wilde as a writer? My answer is charming. Yes, that's the word. He makes you uneasy, makes you tense, traps you in a world of beauty and pain, and torments you. But once you've encountered him, you cannot be indifferent to him. Today, we're discussing The Picture of Dorian Gray, one of Wilde's most astonishing works, and one that leaves a deep impression. Let's open this novel and follow Wilde into Victorian London, a city full of charm and illusion, where art and beauty, corruption and sin intertwine. The story's protagonist is the young and charming Dorian Gray. When Dorian appears, he is already over 20. He is a youth with all the candor, passion, and purity of youth written on him. He is charming yet unaware of it, not because he is too young, but because he is unloved. Dorian Gray has an unfortunate background. His mother was a beautiful noblewoman who fell in love with a penniless young man, and she eloped with him. This enraged her father, who felt the family was disgraced. The father, Lord Kelso, sent a Belgian thug to insult his son-in-law, leading to a duel in which the son-in-law was killed. As a result, Dorian Gray's mother lost her husband and was forced to return to her father, Lord Kelso. This made her so unhappy that she soon died in sorrow. Dorian Gray became an orphan, raised by his grandfather, who actually despised him. His grandfather soon passed away as well, and Dorian's guardian became Lady Radley, a sickly, old-fashioned woman. Dorian's life was indeed tragic. He never experienced the joys and sweetness of a normal family and never knew what warmth was. He was a person who had never truly lived, and so he never realized that he was deserving of love. As Dorian Gray grew older, he developed astonishing beauty, a beauty untouched by the world's corruption, something to be envied. By chance, Dorian encountered a mysterious artist named Basil Hallward, who created an extraordinary portrait of him. The love the artist poured into the work made Dorian Gray realize his own allure. This was his moment of awakening and the beginning of his misfortune. The book describes it as follows. The portrait made Dorian Gray turn back, step back, and a blush of pleasure immediately flushed his cheeks. His eyes sparkled with joy, as if he was recognizing himself for the first time. Dorian stood there, transfixed and astonished, recognizing his beauty as a significant discovery, something he had never realized before. So, how beautiful was Dorian Gray? In the center of the studio, on an easel, stood a full-length portrait of an extraordinarily handsome young man. Sitting a short distance away from it was the portrait's creator, Basil Hallward. Dorian's beauty inspired the artist's creativity and drive. He perfectly captured Dorian's image on the canvas, creating the pinnacle of his artistic career. The artist himself was so captivated by this physical beauty that he poured too much of himself into the painting. He was so entranced that he refused to exhibit or sell the painting for fame, preferring instead to quietly admire it. As a result, years ago, the artist suddenly disappeared, causing quite a stir and sparking numerous wild speculations. Another character in the story is Lord Henry. Henry doesn't commit crimes. He is a man of high society. He believes that just as all vulgarity is a sin, all sin is also vulgar. He deliberately distances himself from vulgar people and things, but he enjoys luring others into crime or even death. Dorian Gray once said to him, "You wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice anyone." Henry, just to perfect one of your epigrams.